One of the biggest stories in film photography in the year 2022 was JCH, Japan Camera Hunter, for those of you who may not know, announced that they were developing a brand new, completely new formulation slide film. And they were going to call this film Fugufilm 400. And to say that the film photography community was excited about this release would be an understatement. There are only two companies in the world that make slide films at this point, and we were all excited for there to be a third. And not to mention the 400 speed, the higher speed film, it would be the only 400 speed slide film in the world at this point. So we were all very excited. And the original announcement stated that around December of 2022 was when this film was originally supposed to be released. And here's some sample images of Fugufilm 400. Taking a look at some of the sample images, you can see the colors aren't exactly realistic, but they are very interesting to look at. And I think lots of us were really interested in shooting it. And they kind of look cool, maybe shifted just a little bit to the red end of the spectrum, but very delightful. Kind of a retro chrome feel is what I was getting from a lot of these images. Over the course of the past year, we'd received a number of updates on the film stock, and that's how we've seen a lot of those sample images. And Japan Camera Hunter does this live stream once a week where they provide updates on their products, discussion points, the YouTube videos that they're going to be releasing, kind of a weekly update. And over time, and I guess as the prospects of Fugufilm 400 being released anytime soon kind of tapered off, the updates became less and less frequent. It became a little bit of a running joke because folks were always interested when Fugufilm 400 is going to come out, and obviously, for one reason or the other, it had been delayed. And at one point, we got an update from JCH that said the manufacturer hasn't reached their goal and hasn't been communicating well with JCH. Now, at this point, even to today, even with today's updates, we don't have any idea who this manufacturer is. I think we can have a couple guesses. I think the smart money at this point is probably on Kodak or Fuji, but they haven't exactly spelled out who the manufacturer was. But fast forward to this week, where JCH went live on their Instagram to provide an update on the future of Fugufilm 400. And they gave us a couple of interesting pieces of information about the delays and perhaps some of the reasons why that's occurring. First, JCH pointed out that Fugufilm 400 was in the final stages of production. This is essentially a finished product. It's ready to release. They just need somebody to make the film based on the formulations that they've already came up with. So that's pretty good news. And the other thing is based on the continuing theme of intellectual property disputes. I'm looking at Cinestill from the past couple weeks. JCH pointed out that they also received a cease and desist letter. This time, though, it was from a company named after a mountain in Japan. So we don't need a lot of guesses to figure out who that is. I think we can all deduce that that's probably Fujifilm that they're alluding to. And as an aside, in contrast to the Cinestill situation, it feels like to me that probably that cease and desist letter from Fujifilm was probably warranted. I mean, they're calling the film Fugufilm. It's one letter off. It sounds substantially the same. They're clearly trying to derive some of that goodwill from the Fujifilm name. And I understand Fujifilm not wanting them to do that. It's just a really dumb name. You're going to spend all this money developing a new product. You're going to run the risk of getting sued because of the name. That was just not really smart business from my part. But I think hindsight being 2020, they could have done a little better on the naming front. So here we are, knocking on the door of the year 2024. The name is still stupid, and now they're staring down a lawsuit. And that wasn't all, though. On the Reddit thread discussing the information that I just provided, the updates from the live stream, JCH actually replied to a comment on that thread. The official JCH account on Reddit had this to say: "There's a whole lot more to the story. Some I can tell, some I'm not allowed. I'd like to be able to tell my side one day without getting sued. There are some very bad actors in this industry, unfortunately, and they have much deeper pockets than I do. I can say that we invested a huge amount of money and time on the project. I was not the primary investor, so the money man got to choose the name." So there's JCH already trying to punt on the name situation. They're saying it was somebody else who tried to name the film Fugufilm, which is whatever. They go on to state that we still have what is essentially a finished product. It took us over 4 years and so many different versions to get it right. Back and forth. COVID was the real kicker, as it basically shut down the project for nearly 3 years. The main hurdle now is that the industry has changed. The manufacturer is now basically demanding $1.5 million to make the first run, which is triple the original agreed price. I cannot go into all the reasons why, but they changed ownership and it made things a lot more difficult for us. I want to make this film, but not at the detriment of the customer. I don't want it to be a really expensive film that is unattainable. It was meant to be a moment of change for the industry to show that it can be done. The team that worked on the film are immensely proud of the product, especially considering the challenges they faced, and it's an entirely new product, despite what some less than reputable people think. I will continue to work on this and try to make it a reality. Now I need a good lawyer, an investor or several, and a new set of trademarks. And for the record, there are a lot of people in this industry who don't have the first idea how film is produced and the logistics of the process. Those who shout the loudest usually have nothing to actually say. So that concludes everything JCH had to say. Where does that leave us? unfortunately, it feels like it leaves us back where we started, with two major film manufacturers that are capable of producing slide film, and Fugufilm 400 being way off on the horizon if we're able to get it at all. And it certainly won't be under the name Fugufilm, I can assure you at this point. A couple of comments on the post. JCH really seems to have a chip on their shoulder. They seem to be really salty at a few people there, and I don't want to try to read the tea leaves and try to figure out exactly who they're mad at, but clearly they're frustrated, and that makes a lot of sense. I do understand their frustration with the manufacturer potentially raising prices on them down the road, but that was probably something that should have been contracted beforehand, but I digress. I don't know who it is out there that's insisting that making film is easy. I think most of us who follow the film photography industry at all know that this is actually a very hard thing. There are less than a handful of companies in the world that are actually capable of manufacturing 35mm roll film, so I don't know where we would get the impression that this is an easy thing. Most of us who are around this any at all know that even Lomography, they just contract Kodak and other companies to make their films. Lomography doesn't own a film factory where they're actually making the film themselves. They're paying other manufacturers to make it for them. So like, we all know this is very hard. I don't know who exactly he's lecturing that making film is hard. It's plainly a very hard thing, or other companies would be doing it. But I think at this point, it's safe to say we're not getting Fujifilm 400 for this foreseeable future. And I think if I was putting money on it, we're probably not getting the film stock at all, but that remains to be seen. Sadly for us, this was a very ambitious project. Everybody at the outset knew that this was an ambitious project. I think all film photographers at this point would love to have more options available for us to shoot. And this is a big blow. This is very disappointing. This was my #1 most look forward to film stock this year. So to see that we may not be getting this film stock at all is very, very, very disappointing. And if you want to learn more about a slide film that you can actually get your hands on, check out this video I made about Fujifilm Velvia. You can click a link in my description and actually buy a roll of that slide film today. And if you enjoy this type of content, you can also take a look at my Patreon. There's an option to donate there, and it'll help me make more videos for you like this. But as always, guys, thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.